of my favorite vegan festivals, and this just in my opinion, and also in my opinion, the most prestigious, in my opinion, are the Vegfest events. Vegfest, I've been to Vegfest London, I've been to one of the Vegfests in Scotland as well. They're amazing. It's kind of like paradise for vegans or those who have an interest in plant-based eating. And joining me now is Tim Barford, who is one of the masterminds behind the Vegfest event. So first of all, welcome to Kirly-Sue's Plant-Based Kitchen, Tim.
Hi, Kirly-Sue. Thanks very much. Very happy to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem.
For such a lovely intro. Of course, you've been a firm favourite at our shows for a number of years now, and being witness to the rise in plant-based living, especially, but also in interest in ethics of veganism. Both have just gone into orbit, as they say, over the last probably 6-7 years, I think. And I think that's pretty much how long since you've been coming to our events.
About that, yes, definitely.
And it's an interesting time. On that note, seeing some really big investments into vegan supermarkets, vegan meat alternatives. Millions of pounds been raised very quick. But that whole transition period of the last 7 years, of which we've been such a big part of, almost feels like it's kind of a watershed now. We're moving now into a world where plant-based living is established. It's becoming very, very prevalent in many places. It's almost like many hearts and minds, I think that battle is won. The pretty much plant-based approach is established now. There's people who disagree with veganism. They disagree with going 100% plant-based, but the idea of being pretty much plant-based, lots of plant-based options and celebrating that really, really has taken a really big mainstream.
And I'm really grateful for that, because it's because of the flexitarians. So there's a certain percentage of people in the UK who identify themselves as vegan, but there's also a lot of people who are not vegan but are happy to have vegan options. And because of that large group, that helps encourages people to manufacture more and more vegan products, knowing that it's not just the vegan population. People will eat it anyway, vegan or not, because there's a lot of flexitarians, vegan curious, or whatever they call themselves. So this is great. So this brings me to your event, Vegfest, which is a great event for me. What I love about it is when I go there, I don't have to ask anyone what's in their product, nothing. Because as a vegan, you always say, oh, does it have egg in it? Because sometimes people don't realize eggs aren't vegan. Has it got any milk in it? Is it plant-based? You know the typical questions. But Vegfest for me is like paradise. I just walk around and go, right, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. But you have been a vegan for 40 years, am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. I would say I've been pretty much plant-based from 1980.
Wow.
17.
So you've seen some changes.
I kind of switched into what used to be called a vegetarian diet. So it was definitely, and I remember as a student, we used to have weekend parties, which, started on probably Thursday, finished on Tuesday or something. So, and in the middle, so certainly by Sunday, it would be me making some food. And I've been making things out of plant-based ingredients. And we needed to go back to see mum and dad and what have you in some kind of fit state to be able to converse. So a good bit of food come Sunday lunch was a big part of my initial life, age 17, which I'm sure teenagers would relate to 100%. It kind of went from there, but I think it was in 1984, age 21, when I encountered some animal rights activists for the first time. And the the concept of veganism as a way of life that doesn't use any animals at all suddenly became, in my consciousness. I kind of went vegan straight away, like as they say, overnight. However, it took a while. We were in the times of the butter mountain. We had the EU butter mountains back in 1984. I used to actually really enjoy eating butter. And there were stacks of it everywhere, really cheap. They were just sort of almost giving it away. And I remember having, issues with resisting cheap. Yeah. And of course, we were living on dole up in Leeds during the miners' strike, Thatcher's Britain. So it's quite a dynamic time to go vegan. Vegan meant pretty much sort of white sliced and bread and chips. But maybe a tin of beans if you were lucky. That was, So I suppose this idea of a healthy vegan was a little bit like, a lot of the vegan then was very much underground. It was sort of counterculture,
right,
class, and very much alternative. And it was very much a revolution, a very much political statement. It was very much. I love this idea of, it's described by people more eloquent than me as the great refusal. For me, this was at the time of Live Aid, and this was the time we were seeing the effective, and it's like it was the great refusal to buy into this deeply unethical chain that resulted in the British government spending more money with Ethiopian farmers to grow cattle fodder to import into the UK during that famine. The little land and the little water was basically hijacked by wealthy nations to grow cattle fodder, and the people starved. And we watched this unfold in front of us on the TV for the first time ever in a generation. And the reason I went vegan was never for the animals, it was for the people, actually. And
right.
It was to refuse to buy into this deeply unjust food systems that perpetrated this. And for me, it was the only long-term solution. And buying a record, we bought records and we shared this information, and we bought into Live Aid as a generation. But the long-term solution is always going to be cut out the middle, man. Cut out, all this, 100 times more water to produce and 10 times more land, 1,000 times more. Our planet and our growing population does not allow for this mismanagement of livestock farming and on humanitarian grounds. And I stuck to that for a long time. But then I kind of, I got involved in animal rights philosophy. That was probably only about the time I met you, actually. So probably about 7 years ago that I began to understand the real underpinning of veganism is an animal rights position. So you have this plant-based diet, and we do a lot of plant-based living, which is really good for their health and environment and sustainable food, which are fabulous reasons to adopt a plant-based diet. But veganism is an ethos. It's based on basically the way I would describe veganism is a set of lifestyle choices that reflects an animal rights position. An animal rights position is that all animals, human and non-human, have a right not to be used as property. All animals have a right to live, not be used as property, not to be owned, not to be commodified, ultimately not to be killed for profit.
You're right.
We have that right, all of us. And then veganism is then, okay, that's what veganism is. Different from a plant-based diet. It's a philosophical position. It's an approach to life. And then everything that you do, all the choices you make reflect that underpinning, understanding animals, all animals, one basic right, not to be used. That's it.
Well, funnily enough, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which I am a member of, I was brought up in the Seventh-day Adventist religion, which is a Christian religion. It upholds plant-based diet. So not all, but a lot of Seventh-day Adventists are vegan and vegetarian. And if they do eat meat, they only eat certain kinds of meat, or they're meat avoiders, they keep it to a minimum. So I've always grown up knowing about a plant-based diet, but I became a vegetarian when I was 18, and then I became vegan, about 8-9 years ago now. And that's when I started to go to events like yours. So for our listeners and viewers who may not have been to a Vegfest event, I know that the last one was probably online, but typically just to sum up what a Vegfest event is like.
We started in 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be vegan 20 years. So it's getting off 20 years ago now. So it's about halfway through. 20 years ago, we thought, let's have a festival. Sounds like a great idea. Any excuse for a party. I've been a previous rave promoter and festival organizer in the 80s and the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
This was a fabulous opportunity to bring my real passion of veganism to my other passion, which is rock and roll, music, festivals, events. And in 2003, we had our first vegan event in Bristol, the Bristol Vegan Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Just fabulous. It was about 40 stalls, 1,500 people, live music room, and a bar, and a big bar, actually, a huge bar, and a talks room. And it was just great. And we went from 10 to 6. And then afterwards, we had a big party down in a nightclub. We had Bez from Happy Mondays headlining. It was just a fabulous party. But it had this vegan thing going on, which was really rare. And of course, I live in Bristol, and Bristol has this huge culture of music. I've been lucky, obviously, with the whole Massive Attack thing and the whole trip hop, and really Portishead and Tricky. We had some great musical adventures, a Renaissance, a little jungle thing. It's just got some fabulous house music, great DJs. But we've managed to, in fact, we've even got the Bristol sound. But we've managed to kind of bring this kind of Bristol cool in at the Bristol festivals. And then we moved outdoors, and it grew into a huge rock festival. Then we had 25,000 people.
Wow.
And we had 25,000 people in 2012. And in 2013, we went to Olympia. And we started more like an exhibition rather than a festival.
Right.
And then 2020, we did the last, I think, live event at Olympia, which was in February 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We did our Plant Powered Expo on February 1st, 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much since March 2020,
Mm-hmm.
it has been shut. It may reopen in June, given the date driven. So if we're talking, 2021, June 21st is the big date.
Okay.
So, then we'll see, and then but of course, Olympia has now been redeveloped. It's going from 7 halls down to 2 while they do $1 billion refit for the next 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of pressure on shows there. So the whole landscape has changed now for live events.
Yes.
Big deal. I don't know how they'll come back. We'll see. I don't know at the moment. It's still too early to see things like, it's still being discussed, things like vaccine passports or, checks to get into venues. How is that going to work?
Absolutely. So
who knows?
Yes, who knows? So we're almost to the end of our segment, but what I would like to kind of ask you to say to our listeners and viewers is, if somebody is thinking about becoming a vegan, what advice, just 2 or 3 top tips for them if they're thinking of making that transition to a plant-based diet?
Well, I think first of all, it's just be clear that one thing is plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's veganism. So get acquainted with both. Getting on a pretty much plant-based diet is just for health. Whole food plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm.
Attend a Kirly-Sue cooking class. Then you will see and learn how to make some delicious things. So we've got loads of information out there. So getting onto a plant-based diet is all the fun bit. That's the bit that's the easy bit. Cooking, new tastes, just open up and try out. And, there's so many options. But the heart of the plant-based diet is a bees, pulses, grains, seeds, nuts, fruit and vegetables. Cheap, readily accessible, and in whole food state, guess what? Really good for your health. And of course, it's really good for the environment. So, and as we mentioned, sustainable food supply. So those are really good motivations, I think. But they're about you. That's about you feeling healthy and feeling environmentally friendly and perhaps, thinking of the future and being a socially responsible person. Because animals, veganism centers animals. It's a social justice movement. And it's great to understand it that way. This is about animals having a right not to be used, and about humans recognizing that, upholding those rights, and giving animals justice, and giving them that peace, giving them that gift of freedom, that respect that they already should have. And therefore, when it comes to veganism, my advice is to read up. Have a look at someone like Tom Rogan, who's a fabulous philosopher. They've done some great work. Have a look on YouTube, maybe. And then maybe avoid all the scary stuff. You don't have to go down the dark side necessarily. You can always look at the philosophy and understand about really whether animals have that right, whether they should be property or persons. And if we grant them a moral value, then we should not use them. We should uphold their right not to be used. So that's what I would advise.
Okay.
Go to the philosophy for veganism, go to the Kirly-Sue's cookery class for a plant-based diet,
and
go at your own pace. Go at your own pace.
Yes.
Support yourself. Get that support. Talk to good people. Get good sources. And embrace what is such a wonderful way of life for the whole lot of us. That's the beauty.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today. And keep me posted about your wonderful events when they're next on. I'm sure I'll be there in some shape or form. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure. Bye.
Lovely. Thank you.